The sky had turned orange when the first ships broke through the clouds. At first, people thought it was another military exercise. Then the buildings began to shake. Then the sirens howled. Then people screamed. No one had ever seen ships like those before. Smooth, silent, black as night. They moved like shadows but burned everything they touched. Earth's defenses fired back, but the beams vanished before hitting. It was like the enemy knew what would be fired before it was even launched. The aliens didn't come to negotiate. They didn't send warnings, they came to claim. Within the first day, 6 major cities were gone. By the second, Earth's satellites went dark. On the third day, humanity stopped fighting and started hiding. In one of the ruined cities, under a collapsed metro station, a young man named Riven stayed alive by moving only at night. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't special. He just knew how to survive. While others shouted, he listened. While others ran, he planned. That kept him breathing. He had no idea that something had been watching him. Not a drone, not a scout, but her. The one they called Valthura. One of the first blade commanders of the Jareen Dominion. A being bred for war. Born in flame. Crowned in lightning. She found him while he was tending to a wounded animal. She waited, unseeing, curious. He should have smelled her presence. Should have felt her power. But he didn't. He hummed softly while feeding the injured creature. It was not fear she sensed in him. It was calm. When she stepped from the shadows, her glowing blade already drawn, he didn't flinch. He slowly stood, hands raised. She had expected terror. Instead, he looked tired. Like he had seen worse than death and survived it. His lips curled into a smile. "You should be afraid," she said in perfect English. Her voice was deep but musical. "You stand before a Jareen commander. Your kind falls like leaves before us." "I am," he replied, not blinking. "Not of you, of what I'll do next. You'll be running." She tilted her head, amused, intrigued. She had heard threats. She had seen fear dressed up as courage, but this felt different. He wasn't bluffing. He wasn't posturing. He was simply telling her something he believed was true. Valthura lunged, faster than a blink. In one motion, she had him on the ground, her knee on his chest. The dagger's glowing edge rested against his throat. His breathing stayed calm. His heart didn't race, her eyes narrowed. "That wasn't human. You have no armor, no weapon, no army. What could you possibly do that would make me run?" She asked, her face inches from his. Riven looked into her burning violet eyes. Listen, I adapt. I learn. That's why your kind will fail. You conquer, but you don't evolve." Behind them, the air shimmered. For a moment, she thought it was a heat wave. Then she realized the shimmer was moving. Dozens of them, silent figures. Not soldiers, not drones, civilians, survivors, all staring, all armed. None of them afraid. "You thought I was alone," he said quietly, "but we are never alone. Not really. We're humans, that's our curse. And our power." Valthura's blade stayed still, but something in her grip loosened. She glanced around. Every eye was locked on her. Every hand ready. Every soul burning. There was no command. No leader. Just understanding. This wasn't war to them anymore. It was survival. Not just of the body, but of the human spirit. The thing the Jareen had never understood. The thing they couldn't copy, couldn't predict. The thing they thought was weakness. But now it stared her down, and for the first time since she was born, Valthura felt something crawl up her spine. Valthura stood frozen as the wind carried ash through the broken city. Her blade was still on the human's neck, but her confidence was no longer steady. She had seen soldiers rally before, but never like this. Not without orders, not without fear. Around her, the survivors didn't speak. They didn't charge or Shout. They waited, calm and aware. The silence was more dangerous than any weapon. Riven didn't move either. His hands were still by his side. But his eyes never left hers. She could feel it now. Not power in numbers, but power in unity. These people weren't warriors. They were nurses, farmers, engineers, children. But they stood together like a wall of stone. And walls don't tremble when wind passes over them. Vale slowly pulled her blade back. Her breathing remained controlled, but her mind raced. The mission was clear: assess, eliminate, control. But nothing about this felt controlled. This wasn't a planet full of cowards. It was a planet of fire waiting to rise. "You're not like the others," she said, stepping off his chest. Her voice was sharp but not cruel. "You do not bow. You do not cry. Why?" Riven sat up, brushing dust from his shoulder. "We've lost a lot. Homes, families, cities, but not ourselves." "Not yet." The Jareen commander looked around again. They weren't using Jareen tech. No shields, no cloaks, no plasma blades. And still, they stood ready. She had never faced an enemy that relied on nothing but will. "You believe you can stop us with courage?" she asked. Her tone carried less venom than before. "We can't stop you today," Riven replied. "But we're not trying to win in one battle. We're trying to last long enough that you make a mistake." That answer pierced deeper than a blade. Her kind had ruled 10 systems, crushed rebellion after rebellion, but most species fought back with rage. Humans responded with patience. That made them dangerous. From the rooftops more survivors appeared. Quiet footsteps, watchful eyes. They weren't coming for a fight. They were coming to see if one would begin. Velthura sheathed her weapon. Not out of fear, but out of curiosity. She had seen what fear looked like. This wasn't it. This was something ancient. Something that didn't kneel even when surrounded by death. "What are your people planning?" she asked Riven, watching his posture closely. "We don't all agree," he admitted. "Some want revenge, some want peace. Some just want to survive another day. But what we all want is a choice. And we'll fight for that." Her gaze narrowed. "Even if it costs you everything?" He nodded. "Because it's ours to lose." The words stayed in her mind longer than they should have. Her orders were simple. Destroy resistance. Report back. But something about this human made her hesitate. Not because he was a threat, but because he was a warning. One of the younger survivors stepped forward, barely 12. She held a slingshot made of string and scrap. She didn't tremble. Her eyes locked with Vale Thuras. The girl didn't hate her. She simply refused to fear her. "You're raising warriors without weapons," Vale Thura muttered. "No," Riven said. "We're raising people who don't run." For a moment, no one moved. Then Vale Thura stepped back, nodded once, and turned away. She didn't run. But she didn't attack either. The survivors parted, watching her disappear into the ash and stone. Riven stood and looked around. He didn't cheer. He didn't smile. He just breathed. Then he spoke 3 words to the others. Words that meant nothing to the enemy, but everything to the ones who heard them. "We're not done." Vale Thuras' boots echoed softly as she walked through the remains of the shattered district. She did not call for her ship. She did not send a report. Her mind was loud, louder than the winds that howled through the steel bones of the city. She had expected resistance. She had prepared for traps. She had anticipated death. What she had not expected was a man like Riven, speaking softly and standing tall without armor or power. He didn't plead. He didn't curse. He just looked her in the eyes and made her question herself. And that was more dangerous than any weapon he could have raised. As she climbed the cracked staircase of a broken tower, she reached into her armor and pulled out a small orb. The device glowed blue, ready for command. She could call in a strike, burn the entire block. No one would stop her, but she didn't activate it. Not yet. Something inside her, an instinct long buried under layers of training and pride, told her to wait. To understand. To observe, far above in orbit, the Jareen fleet watched everything. Drones followed her path. Commanders whispered in high command. She was not alone, and yet she felt more alone than she had in any war. Elsewhere, Riven and the survivors had moved underground again. The tunnels were damp and cold, filled with whispers and flickering lights, but spirits were high. For the first time in weeks, no one cried in the dark. Riven stood at the center of the chamber, speaking with others. Leaders from other pockets of resistance had arrived. Engineers, medics, teachers. No one had uniforms, but every one of them carried weight. "The Blade Commander didn't kill you?" one asked. His voice was rough, coated with disbelief. "No," Riven said. She looked at us. And she hesitated. A silence followed. Not fear, something deeper. Hope was a strange thing. It didn't shout, it whispered. And now it was whispering through the tunnels of the last free humans. Riven pointed to a map burned into the wall with torchfire. "We've been reacting to their moves, running, scattering. That has to change. We need to build, fortify. And more than that, we need to confuse them." "How?" another voice asked. "They have eyes in the sky, ears in the walls, machines under the dirt. Then we make them see ghosts," Riven replied. "We feed them false moves. We become noise. The kind they can't decode." The humans began to plan. Not with generals, but with stories. They talked of abandoned tech fields, of lost labs, of scavengers who saw Jareen drones freeze in. Storms. Every rumor became a piece of something real. Above ground, Vale Thura entered a hollow chamber where vines now grew between collapsed beams. She placed the glowing orb on the ground and sat before it, legs crossed. The air buzzed as the transmission formed. A figure appeared in the projection. High Executor Korval, his voice a low hum of command. "Report," he said. Vale Thura kept her voice steady. "The sector is unyielding. Resistance is scattered but adapting. The human Riven, he's not like the others. He leads with silence, not orders. Terminate him," Korval ordered. "Before the silence becomes a storm." She paused. Her fingers brushed the orb's surface. "Permission to delay action. I believe there is more to gain by watching him longer." Korval's eyes narrowed. "You question the order?" "I question the method," she replied. The projection vanished. The orb dimmed. She remained seated, watching the vine sway. In the dead wind, something was shifting. Not just in the humans, but in her. And she didn't yet know if that made her weak, or more dangerous than ever. The deeper the humans dug into the tunnels, the more secrets they uncovered. Beneath layers of old concrete and steel, they found remnants of an abandoned research facility. The place was silent, cold, and coated in dust, but the machine still hummed faintly. Riven stood before a large, sealed door. The lock was scorched, melted long ago. Behind it, something glowed blue in the shadows. A forgotten chamber. He turned to the others and nodded. "Let's open it carefully." Inside the room were cylindrical pods lining the walls. Some were cracked. Some still held sealed contents. But the one in the center drew their attention. Inside it was a suit, not meant for war, but for survival in places where war had already destroyed everything. One of the engineers stepped closer, examining the markings. "This is pre-invasion tech, not ours, not theirs. Something built during the first contact wars." Riven stared at it, his thoughts racing. "We'll study it, quietly. Don't let word spread. If the Jareen find out we're unlocking old tech, they'll burn this place before we breathe twice." As the team set to work, a child approached Riven holding a piece of old plastic. It was a photo, faded and bent, showing a group of scientists. standing with smiles before a glowing machine. In the corner of the photo was a signature Riven recognized. His father's name was scrawled in the corner. That night, under flickering lights, Riven sat alone with the photo. His memories were broken, but he remembered the man's voice. A whisper in the dark. A hand that never shook even in fear. His father hadn't just vanished. He had been part of something. Across the city, Valthura stood on a rooftop watching. The sky. Her orders remained clear, but her actions no longer followed them without question. Something about the way the humans moved, how they hid, how they helped each other, unsettled her. She had spent her life studying war. Victory came from domination, speed, precision. But humans didn't move in straight lines. They bent, they broke. Then they stood again. Like fire through cracks in stone. She activated her internal communicator, a private channel. Commander Valthura requesting temporary field silence. Tactical observation required without interference. Permission was granted without hesitation. She was one of their elite, trusted, but even as the signal ended, she knew trust could be withdrawn at any moment. She descended into the streets again, moving unseen. Her armor cloaked her from sensors, but not from sound. She heard laughter in the ruins, soft, warm, the kind that didn't belong in war zones. It belonged at dinner tables and campfires. She followed the sound to a broken courtyard. Survivors had gathered around a fire made from scrap and fuel. They shared stories. A woman hummed an old Earth song. A boy passed pieces of bread. No guards, no weapons. Just people living while under threat. Valthura remained hidden, crouched among the shadows. And for the first time, she felt something. Rise in her chest she couldn't name. It wasn't disgust. It wasn't pity. It was the feeling of seeing something you'd been told could not exist. Peace beneath invasion. She returned to her camp and stared at her weapon for a long time. The blade glowed as it always had, ready, deadly, but her hand didn't reach for it. Her thoughts were elsewhere. If she could feel this, then others in her kind might too. And if they did, the war wouldn't just be fought in cities. It would be fought in their minds. She looked up at the stars and whispered a single word: change. The air inside the old facility had grown warmer as the buried generators came back to life. Dust lifted from vents and danced in thin shafts of light cutting through the broken ceiling. The suit in the pod pulsed faintly with power, waiting to be touched. Riven stood beside the pod, staring through the glass. He didn't move for a long time. Something about it felt personal. It wasn't just a relic of the past. It was connected to him, to his father, to something bigger than war. The lead engineer finally stepped forward and opened the seal. The air hissed and the chamber lit up. Inside, the suit shimmered with a strange alloy, a mix of old Earth metals and something alien. Its design was sleek, made not for destruction, but survival. Riven asked, "Can it be activated safely?" The engineer nodded. "Yes, but once it bonds, it may not release. It's adaptive, built to respond to whoever." "Where's it?" He didn't hesitate. He placed his hand on the surface of the suit. It glowed brighter, then began to shift. The pieces unfolded, rising into the air, surrounding his body without force. It wasn't attacking. It was welcoming. When the pieces latched onto him, the room fell silent. The light dimmed. The suit locked into place with a final pulse. He stood still, feeling the hum of energy flow through him. It wasn't power like the Jereen used. It was something else. Something alive. His breathing slowed. The heads-up display inside the helmet lit up in soft green tones. Symbols he didn't understand danced across the interface, then translated. "Welcome, protocol link established. Biosignature, valid." The others watched in awe as Riven moved his hand. A holographic map appeared, showing nearby Jereen patrols, resources, and possible safe paths. The suit wasn't just armor, it was memory. A library disguised as metal. We have a chance now, he said. We're not just hiding anymore. We're going to outsmart them. Meanwhile, Vale Thura returned to her forward base, where a secondary commander awaited her. He was taller, built like a war machine. And his name was Tarvik. His face showed no emotion, only duty. You've gone silent, Vale Thura. That is not like you. I've been watching, she replied. The humans are not what we believed. Their strength is not just in numbers. It's in their will, Tarvik narrowed his gaze. Do not confuse defiance with power. They scatter like insects before fire. Their end is only delayed. Vale Thura stepped closer. Have you seen the boy called Riven? He was unarmed and yet made me step back, not because of fear, but because he held something none of our kind do. A calm that does not break. He is human, Tarvik said coldly. He will die like one. Perhaps, she answered. But what if killing him changes nothing? What if it only spreads his fire? Tarvik didn't respond. He turned and walked away, issuing commands to ready an orbital strike. Vale Thura remained behind, watching the glow of the targeting system lock onto the surface. Beneath the ground, Riven felt it. The suit pulsed with warning. Incoming heat. High-altitude scans. The Jareen were preparing to level the entire district. No warning, no message. Just fire from the sky. He turned to the others. They know we're here. We move now. Not away. Forward, into the signal tower. We hijacked their link and blind the sky. The survivors didn't argue. They moved like water through cracks, fast, quiet, unstoppable. And above them, the countdown to destruction had already begun. Asterisk. The tunnel leading to the signal tower was narrow and lined with old roots. Dust fell from the ceiling with every footstep. Riven led the way, the suit's light guiding them through the darkness like a quiet beacon. He moved differently now. Stronger, yes, but not just in body. The suit didn't give him power. It revealed. Every step he took was sharper. Every breath was focused. His mind worked faster, and every sound around him seemed louder than before. Behind him, the survivors carried what gear they could. Crates of old wires, pieces of stolen tech, tools pulled from ruins. They weren't soldiers, but they moved like a team that had trained for years. Riven held up a fist and everyone froze. Ahead he could hear humming. The tower's generators were alive. But so was something else. Footsteps. Mechanical, slow, rhythmic. Jareen patrol. He turned to the group. We don't fight unless we must. We move when the machine turns its back. Quiet and clean. The others nodded. As the machine passed by, a tall four-legged walker with red scanning lights, the humans slipped past its shadow. One boy stumbled. The girl beside him caught him without a word. They kept moving. At the end of the tunnel was a stairwell leading upward. Cracked steps, sharp metal. Riven climbed first, pressing his hand to the door. The suit pulsed. The lock clicked. They entered. The base of the tower. The control room had long been abandoned, but it still worked. Screens glowed weakly. Dust covered the panels. But the uplink was intact. Riven approached it slowly, scanning for traps. Then he plugged the suit's connector into the console. The system flared. Lights returned. A soft voice echoed inside. His helmet. Override signal accepted. Targeting feed accessed. Enter coordinates or cancel strike. He blinked. They had control of the orbital cannon. It was still charging. Minutes away from firing. But now they could stop it. Or turn it. We can redirect the strike, said one of the techs. Wipe out one of their dropships. Blind their scouts. Whatever we choose. Riven didn't answer right away. He stared at the screen. His reflection showed a man wearing a weapon older than the war itself. But the eyes were still his, focused. Calm. Human. Blind them, he said. Shut down their feed. Make them guess for once. Below the tower, Tarvik watched the countdown clock. Everything was set. His orders were clear. Clean the district. Leave no trace. One blast and the rebels would be ash. But then the targeting system blinked. The lock vanished. The connection severed. The cannon froze. Its countdown halted. Tarvik. Eyes narrowed. Trace the interference, he growled. Beside him, Valthura remained silent. Her arms were crossed. Her expression unreadable, but her thoughts were not. She knew who had done it. And part of her was glad. In the tower, the screens dimmed. Riven unplugged the suit. We move again. They'll come fast now. And hard, but they're blind. He turned to leave, but the suit stopped him. A new signal flashed inside his helmet. A voice, garbled, weak, but familiar. His father's name appeared in the corner of the feed. The message repeated once. If you found this, then you're ready. What's coming is bigger than this war. And you must choose whether to end it or survive it. Riven stood in silence as the others watched him. Then he spoke softly. We go north. There's something buried there. Something meant for this day. And with that, they moved again through the ruins of a world that refused to kneel. The wind howled as Riven and the survivors crossed the shattered highways toward the north. Broken towers loomed like skeletons above them. The air was thick with smoke and memory. Every step was heavy, but every step mattered. The message from his father still played in his mind. A voice lost to time, but not to purpose. It had spoken of something larger than the war. Something waiting beneath the earth. A choice between ending everything or enduring it. The group reached a field filled with twisted metal and forgotten machines. It was once a battleground. Now it was quiet. Peaceful in the way only ruined places could be. At the center stood a metal hatch sealed by roots and time. Riven approached it carefully. The suit recognized the location. Symbols lit up along the metal surface. A circular panel rose, scanning his hand and eyes. The lock released with a deep, echoing sound. They descended into the hidden chamber. The lights activated automatically, casting a soft glow over the walls. Strange markings lined the corridors. Not human, not Jareen. Something older. Something forgotten by both. Inside the main chamber, they found a structure made of black stone and glowing crystal. A single pedestal stood at the center, and on it rested a sphere humming with quiet energy. The suit pulsed in response. Artifact linked. Origin, unknown. Function, containment. What is it containing? One of the survivors asked. Riven stepped closer. The moment his hand touched the sphere, visions flooded his mind. Not images, feelings, grief, war, sacrifice. A memory not his, but bound to the object. A warning whispered through time. He pulled back, breathing hard. It's not a weapon. It's a choice, a failsafe. Left behind by those who saw what unchecked war becomes. If we use it, everything ends. Jareen, us, all of it. The room fell silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Then the youngest of the group, a girl no older than 12, stepped forward. Then we don't use it, we protect it. Until no one needs it, Riven nodded. We seal it again, but we mark the path. Not so it's found easily, but so it's never truly lost. Back at the Jareen base, Tarvik stared at the reports. Pouring in, patrols lost, feeds cut, sightlines broken. His patience wore thin. The humans weren't just surviving. They were resisting with strategy. He slammed his fist on the console. Find Riven. Now. I don't care what it takes. Bring me his head. Valthura stood nearby, arms folded. She had been quiet for too long, but now she stepped forward. And if his head only makes more like him, what then? Tarvik turned sharply. You question me. I question war that no longer serves its purpose, she replied. He reached for his weapon, but she was faster. Her blade hummed at his throat before he could blink. I have seen what you fear. And it's not humans. It's change. He didn't speak again. She lowered her blade and walked away, not as a soldier, but as someone who had already chosen a side. In the ruins above, Riven stood in the cold morning light. The chamber was sealed behind them once more. He turned to the group, who now looked at him not just as a guide, but as something more, a spark in the dark. We've done more than survive, he said. We've shown them we're not shadows. We're the storm they never saw coming. And in the sky above, the clouds parted. For the first time in weeks, the clouds above the ruins began to clear, revealing a pale blue sky that had not been seen in days. For a moment, the survivors simply stood still, watching the light return. It felt like a sign, small but undeniable. Riven stood at the edge of the broken platform, looking toward the horizon. Smoke still rose in the distance. Jareen ships still moved in the sky. But something had changed. The fear that once ruled the ground had begun to fade. They had sealed away the artifact. Not to forget it, but to guard it. A tool too dangerous for either side to use. It had reminded them what war could become if left unchecked. And in that truth, they had found unity. The humans now operated as one. Messages passed between scattered groups. Hidden networks grew stronger. Every ruin became a base. Every survivor became a fighter. Not with weapons alone, but with ideas. Riven led not with orders, but with example. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, his words carried weight. He wasn't trying to win the war in one move. He was changing the rhythm of it. Valthura watched him from the shadows of a nearby ridge. She had followed the humans. After leaving her command, not to hunt them, but to understand what made them stand when others fell. She saw how they treated each other, with respect, with care. Even in the middle of suffering, they shared food, they built shelters. They told stories to the young and made them laugh when they had no reason to. That was what the Dominion never understood. They had tried to erase humanity through fear and fire. But the more they tried, the stronger the humans became. Not because of weapons, but because of each other. Valthura stepped out from the shadows. Her presence made the guards raise their weapons. Riven raised his hand slowly, signaling them to lower them. He met her eyes. She no longer wore the full armor of command. Only pieces remained. Her blade was not drawn. Her stance was neutral. But her voice was steady. I didn't come to fight, she said. I came to decide where I stand. You already have, Riven replied. There was a long silence between them. Then she nodded once. A quiet gesture of something more than respect, something close to trust. The first bond between two enemies who no longer wished to be enemies. She told them what she knew. Jareen troop movements, command routes, internal disagreements within the Dominion, seeds of doubt growing among their own warriors, proof that even conquerors could fracture. With her knowledge, the humans planned a signal burst. Not an attack, but a message. A broadcast sent across all channels, Jareen and human alike. A message not of surrender, but of truth. Riven stood before the camera. Behind him were survivors, warriors, children, life. He spoke not as a general, but as a human. We are not leaving, we are not hiding. We are not your enemy unless you choose us to be. The signal echoed across space. Some Jareen ships paused. Some commanders frowned. Some soldiers removed their helmets and stared at the ground. For the first time, the noise of war was broken by words that could not be silenced. Back on Earth, the humans watched the skies. The ships still hovered, but they did not descend. The cannon stayed cold. The storm had not ended, but it had slowed. And sometimes, that is where peace begins. Valthura sat beside the fire that night, not above them, not apart. Just present. One more soul under the stars. Riven passed her a small piece of bread. She accepted it without a word, and in that quiet, something new was born.